The war had ended 3 cycles ago, but Commander James Holt still wore his battle armor like a second skin. The scarred plates had protected him through 17 planetary campaigns. Deflected plasma bolts that should have killed him a dozen times over, and witnessed the extinction of 2 entire species who had underestimated humanity's capacity for violence. He stood now in the crystalline chamber of the Galactic Council, surrounded by representatives from 47 worlds. The air shimmered with translation fields, carrying his words into 1,000 dialects. They had summoned him to receive the highest honor in known space, the Star of Unity, awarded to those who had sacrificed beyond measure for peace. James had drafted his acceptance speech weeks ago. He would speak of fallen comrades, of lessons learned in blood, of hope for a future where armor gathered dust in museums. He had practiced the words until they felt smooth as river stones in his mouth. Ambassador Lyra of the Kelvin Dominion stepped forward to present the award. She was beautiful by any standard, humanoid enough that her features translated easily across species barriers. Violet skin caught the chamber's soft light. 4 delicate fingers held the gleaming medallion. Her eyes, vast and golden, regarded him with something that might have been respect. "Commander Holt," she began, her voice like wind chimes, "you are called here today because your species proved useful in our time of need." The chamber fell silent. Useful. The word hung in the air like a blade. Humanity arrived at Galactic. Society as children stumbling into an adult's. Conversation, she continued. Backward, primitive, barely capable of coherent thought. Your people fought with chemical propellants and crude nuclear weapons, while civilizations, 1,000,000 years your senior debated philosophy across the stars. James felt his jaw tighten. Around the chamber, human dignitaries shifted uncomfortably. This was not the script, but you had one quality we required. Lyra's smile was gentle, almost pitying. You were vicious. When the horde came pouring through the dimensional rifts, when our fleets scattered and our courage failed, humanity threw bodies at the problem with admirable enthusiasm. You bred quickly, died readily, and asked few questions. She stepped closer. The medallion caught the light, scattering rainbows across his breastplate. We spent 3,000 years cultivating a society based on reason, diplomacy, and ethical philosophy. You spent 3,000 years perfecting the art of killing each other over invisible lines on dirt. When existential threat arrived, we discovered which approach had practical value. James heard his heartbeat in his ears. His hands, scarred from 100 battles, remained steady at his sides. 62 billion humans died, pushing the horde back through the rifts, Lyra said. A tragic number, certainly. Though I confess, Ambassador Chun calculated that humanity would replenish those losses within 2 generations at your current reproductive rate. Efficient, really. Your casualties would have bankrupted any civilized world. She held out the medallion. The Star of Unity gleamed between them. This honor recognizes your species' contribution to galactic survival. You served as our teeth when we had forgotten how to bite, our claws when we had evolved beyond such crude instruments. You may not have understanding, culture, or wisdom, but you have proven spectacularly adequate at organized violence. The silence in the chamber was absolute. Even the translation fields seemed to hum with tension. We are grateful, Lyra finished. That evolution produced at least one species, still barbaric enough to do what civilized beings could not. She waited for him to take the medal. Her smile never wavered. James looked down at the Star of Unity, 7 points of platinum and crystal, each representing one of the founding principles of galactic civilization: honor, wisdom, justice, courage, mercy, knowledge, peace. His hand moved toward the medallion, then stopped. His fingers found the seal releases on his chest plate instead. The locks disengaged with soft clicks that echoed like gunshots in the quiet chamber. James pulled the breastplate free and let it fall. It struck the crystal floor with a sound like thunder, cracking one of the decorative tiles. Lyra's smile faltered. He removed the shoulder guards next, both pauldrons still scorched from plasma fire. They clattered beside the breastplate. Then the arm sections, each piece bearing dents from impacts that should have shattered bone. The gauntlets followed, fingers still stiff with dried blood he had never quite cleaned away. "Commander?" Lyra's voice carried the first hint of uncertainty. James said nothing. He unsealed the leg armor, the knee guards, the boots that had carried him across a dozen burning worlds. Each piece joined the growing pile between them. The sound of discarded metal filled the chamber like a drumbeat. Beneath the armor, his uniform was threadbare and stained. Without the bulk of combat plating, he looked smaller, older. His shoulders bore the permanent indentations where armor straps had pressed for years. Scars traced patterns across visible skin, like a road map of violence. He stood in his worn fatigues before the assembled representatives of galactic civilization. And still he said nothing. "The ceremony is not complete," Lyra said. Her confusion was evident now, bleeding through her diplomatic composure. "You must accept the honor." James looked at her. Really looked, for the first time. He saw her perfect skin, unmarred by blade or burn. Her graceful hands that had never gripped a weapon. Her golden eyes that had watched humanity bleed from the safety of these crystalline chambers. He saw in her face the truth of every word she had spoken. Humanity was useful. Nothing more. They were the violet children of the galaxy, kept around for dirty work. Patted on the head when the job was done. The medallion still hung between them. Catching light, James turned and walked toward the chamber's main entrance. His footsteps echoed on crystal tiles. Behind him, the pile of armor stood like a monument to everything he had been, everything he had survived, everything he had believed mattered. "Commander Holt." Lyra's voice had lost its musical quality. "This is highly irregular. The Council has not dismissed you. This honor cannot be refused." He reached the massive doors. Guards moved to block his path, and hesitated. They were Kelvin, graceful, and unarmed. He was human, scarred and empty-handed. They had learned what that combination meant. They stepped aside. "Commander," Lyra called again. "Where will you go? What will you do?" James paused at the threshold. He did not turn around. "Your species needs the Council," Lyra said. "Without our trade, your worlds will starve. Without our technology, you will stagnate. Without our guidance, you will destroy yourselves as you always have." Still, he said nothing. "You are nothing without us," she finished. Her voice carried anger now, the first genuine emotion he had heard from her. Useful tools at best. At worst, barbaric relics waiting for extinction. James stood at the edge of the chamber, framed by doors designed to make visitors feel small. Beyond them stretched the long corridor back to the docking bays, back to his ship, back to human space. Behind him lay the crystalline heart of galactic civilization, where beings ancient and wise had gathered to honor the useful brutality of his species. He thought of the soldiers who had died beside him, the pilots who had rammed their damaged fighters into Horde ships, the Marines who had held impossible positions so civilians could evacuate, the mothers who had picked up rifles when the Horde reached their worlds, 62 billion humans who had bled so that civilizations could maintain their philosophy of peace, useful, barbaric, adequate. James walked through the doors and did not look back. Sound of his footsteps faded down the corridor, leaving only silence and a pile of discarded armor in the center of the crystalline chamber. The star of unity hung forgotten from Lyra's fingers, its 7 points catching light, that no longer illuminated anything worth celebrating. In the docking bay, his ship waited. The engines were warm. The course was already plotted. Home. Human space, where barbaric relics would determine their own future. With or without the blessing of the civilized galaxy, the armor could stay behind. He would not need it anymore. Not for them.